change which has been brought, which will address the concerns of cost and everything, and especially to the litigants. What the statute has done on the fourth schedule, it has given a structure of what the fee structure of the arbitrators should be. It has defined, like, for this amount of claim, this much of money, this amount. So the structure of the fees and the payment schedule all are defined. So there is nothing like arbitrators can charging more or charging less. I think this is a really drastic change. Another thing, incentive which they have given, if there is a sole arbitrator, whatever the fee structure, he gets 25% more. So for the first time, the statute is trying to limit the scope of fee earning capacity of the arbitrators, which on its own is a very bold step taken by the parliament. Frustration, I've gone through it, I won't speak. This one is very interesting. You'll find it's challenge to arbitrators, section 12, but the section has brought in an amazing change in the way the arbitration is going to be held. Firstly, it imposes that you can't have more than 20 cases where you are an arbitrator. Second, he has to file a declaration. Arbitrator has to file a declaration saying that within 12 months I will complete and I have enough time to complete the arbitration. So these things of putting the burden upon the arbitrator is a very positive step. Onus on the arbitrator to disclose, establish that he is. Now just have a look at what is impartial and independent. Arbitrator has to give in writing that no relationship with parties, counsels or disputes. So disputes means subject matter. He may be a part of that dealing or something. Either direct or indirect, past, present, with or interest any parties in relation to the subject matter, financial, business, professional or any other kind of relationship. This is very interesting. I'll just pause over here. There are a lot of agreements in India which has been carried on from 1980s onward. It was very prominent among the public sector undertakings. Public sector undertakings are one of the biggest entity as a sect-wise who are entering commercial transactions in India till date. They have clauses where they say that if there is a dispute, blah, 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 the executive director of the company will appoint a nominee or himself to act as an arbitrator. We call it the internal arbitrator. Law Commission has recommended in the year 2000 to remove these type of clauses because it creates a totally gray area and it's very easy for people to point, no, you are not partial, you are not impartial, you are partial, you are an employee of the company. Those things have been taken now. All PSUs are amending their arbitration agreements. They are all going for institutional arbitration. They are not going for ad hoc where an individual is appointed as an arbitrator. Fifth schedule gives a guidelines. Guidelines is basically for us to look into the guidelines and understand whether he or she is impartial or not. We can challenge the partiality of the arbitrator. And the guidelines are very wide. Sixth schedule is a disclosure format. Seventh schedule regarding the can be waived and everything. I won't take you through the technique. I'll take you to the next part which is very interesting. Hearing procedure. This amendment has given us amazing options to decide how we as parties, along with discussion with arbitrator, can formulate a procedure whereby the hearing will be held, but as per the statutory guidelines. It gives you to decide the time frame. It is expressly, previously the act was that parties may decide. Now the act says that you can have oral, you can have documents, you can call evidence, you cannot call evidence, you can fix a time, you can extend the time for award, but you can't extend after this time. I'll just take you through the points. Total overhaul, as for oral hearing, day-to-day basis, no adjustment, right to the tribunal to make a punitive charge. The cost, tribunal may decide to adjudicate on the basis of document. There is a new section 29A. I've just given you bullet points over there. It says that 12 months from the date of reference. Date of reference is very interesting, from the date when the arbitrator received the letter of appointment. I attended last week to an arbitration. It was a preliminary hearing. It was headed by Justice, ex-Judge, Supreme Court, Mr. Sharma. First thing is that now the law has changed. You just file a time frame. You let me know when you want to start the final hearing. That was the first sentence he told us. He said, let's fix the first final date hearing, not the date, at least the month, February or March, and let's back calculate the procedure. Let's say, so we said, okay, give us 4 weeks time for a state SOC. He said, no, 2.5, 3. So the approach of the courts have changed because he knows he has to finish. He needs another, it's an incentive at the end. I finish one proceeding, I get another one appointed. If award is passed in 6 months, tribunal is entitled to incentive. This is the amazing thing, He is entitled to incentive subject to parties agree. So if his fees is 100 rupees, if he finishes in 6 months, statutes allows, and tribunal definitely will put forward that I am finishing in 6 months, what will be my incentive. Parties may consent to extension of 6 months, but not after that. So maximum extension of the proceeding now is only 18 months. Then what happens? The mandate of the arbitrator shall be terminated. You have to always emphasize the word there, shall. It's not like giving discretion to the court to decide. Shall be terminated unless the court has either prior or after, that is basically application, imposed terms, if delays attributable to tribunal, reduce fees of tribunal and or substitute one or other tribal arbitrators. This is an amazing amendment brought into the proceeding, and these are at par with, if you look at ICC rules, if you look at Singapore or Shanghai Arbitration Center rules, you will see these are all at par. Maybe some different, they have really adopted a very international and broad view, giving the freedom to the parties, and giving incentive to the arbitrator to complete the proceeding as fast as possible. There's an obligation. 29B is another very interesting thing. It gives an option to you to agree to make a fast track. Because nowadays in commercial world, time is money. So the more delay there is, the more the business falls, the more everything falls. In India, it is, we all know, fastest growing GDP, the requirement of the country has changed, the perceive has changed, the business transactions are happening in a far faster way, and it's all IT driven industries now. So at any stage, parties after appointment can agree, let's have a fast track. Fast track, basically, you get rid of the formalities. I'll file my documents, I'll file my pleadings. We don't need an oral hearing. There is no required of evidence. The judge will read and he will pass an order. There may be circumstances, parties say, there is some complexities on an issue. They may call you. But that's the thing. In ICC, up to the final argument, you don't see the arbitrators. Everything is online. You file your claim, you rejoin, they file the reply, then the document, then the written submission, then the documents admitted, not everything is online. You don't see the arbitrator. The day fixed for final hearing, you go there, 4 days fixed, starts 9, finish 6 every day for 4 days, and the hearing has to conclude. So you don't see the arbitrator. So it's amazing. So, the quality of professionalism and the efficiency which will be required, I think this act is amazing. No oral hearing. Tribunal may call any information or clarification, hearing and everything. Fees payable manner to be agreed. I'm just pointing one point on 34 and 36. This is again a very issue where you see the judicial interference, pardon me. What happens in that, once an award is passed, the statute gives you the power to challenge the award if you're aggrieved. The statute lays down few conditions where you can do. The new act, what it does, it defines what is a public policy, though the definition of the public policy has been given very wide, but at least it has defined. Then what happens, you challenge the 34 under the new system. Once you file a 34, it's normally like a memo. It is admitted, never dismissed on filing. The moment you file the execution, i.e. the right of to execute the award, stays automatically. Now what the new act has done is a very amazing. They said no, filing of an appeal under 34 will not give you an automatic stoppage to the execution of the award. For that you have to file an application, and that is a process, and it's very difficult to get a stay nowadays. This is the one, 34, section 36, filing of an application under 34, no automatic stay of the award. independent application to be filed, frustration taken, no. These are the basic conclusions. I've repeated it, I've said it before to you guys. The main thing is that these changes, I personally feel from the limited experience and exposure, that it is very much required. It is required in the present business scenario. It is required for us as a legal fraternity to compete. We can't live just like a frog in a pond. You know, we have to get out of it. To get out of it, you need a system which can match with the international standards. And like I gave you the example of the Singapore International Arbitration Center. So if they can do it, why can't we in our own country? And we can only do it if such amendments starts flowing into the system. So I think I've been able to give you a basic idea of how time, delay, cost, partiality and the freedom of arbitrator, and not taking you to the technicalities of section and subsection, and giving a basic broad idea that the amendment of to the 2015 is a positive step, and there is no other option but to follow that. And I think the future for the legal fraternity is really orange. Thanks a lot, and it's been a pleasure to be before you all, and I'm obliged. Thank you.
In case our learners want to have access to the PPTs, it shall be made available in the event section of our website. You can log on to our website and you can download the same. Also, I would like to inform about our stipend thing. Interns who would be applying for more than 4 weeks are entitled for stipend. So just a little bit of information. And in case our students, learners, as Meenakshi ma'am pointed out rightly, if any particular learner has any question which he or she would like to forward to sir is like, so can I answer that? Any question from the section? Yes?
Hello, sir. So the fees mentioned under Schedule 4, it's a model fees. So how it will regulate it particularly? Because as far as my knowledge, and it's very limited though, we have very less number of arbitrators in the country right now. And there has always been a provision for argument from the side of Indian revenue officers also that apart from judiciary, certain IRS officers should also be appointed as arbitrators. This has not been done. So how can we regulate the fees given the fact we have a less number of arbitrators?
You're absolutely right. The Schedule 4 to the Amendment Act is just a guidance as to what the fee structure should be. There's a short proviso, I forgot to mention you guys over there, which talks about that each High Court of that particular jurisdiction will formulate the rules as to the schedule of payment, how the payment. The Delhi High Court till date has not done. That is first. Number 2 issue is that it's not just limited to judges. Nowadays, if you have heard about scope complex, there is a standing council committee. There are a lot of institutional arbitration bodies now getting very professionalized, and they're having a empanelment of more than, like scope has more than 1,000 arbitrators empaneled, and they're all retired IAS officers, PSC officers with very good qualification, having technical background. So I think the options, it will take time to get the whole thing gelled together, no doubt, because the change has just happened last year only, December. But all the institutional arbitration centers in India have to change, and they are changing, and they are having like technical people who can be arbitrator and everything. But definitely when a section 11 goes, you see, there is one ad hoc arbitration and one is institutional. Institutional are all the bodies. But when section 11 goes, there is a failure of the arbitration agreement. Normally the practice has been the High Court or the Supreme Court, whichever court is appointing the arbitrator, they appoint an ex-judge. That is a fact. But parties, if can avoid section 11, I think I always advise my client, just don't go to the court, avoid litigation, agree to a procedure, and just appoint an ad hoc body or an institutional body and get your process adjudicated. Thank you.
Any further queries?
Sir, could you throw some light on international commercial arbitration, more particularly about the basic requirements that are needed in a contract clause of arbitration because I believe that another source of frustration can be that the parties themselves are irresponsible enough sometimes to not put in those basic requirements that are needed, and this causes a lot of confusion among parties and the arbitrator and then the courts.
On a lighter side, it's good the clients are confused, then they will need us. But on a serious note, yes, you're absolutely right. You see, actually I held a seminar on just on drafting on arbitration agreements. Because arbitration agreement on its own is an independent contract. So whether your main contract, your mother contract is valid, void or whatever, depends, can be adjudicated in the arbitration. But what happens, general practice is that people say commercial transaction, they will do the commercial part of the draft and then they say just copy paste the miscellaneous clauses. Unfortunately, arbitration clause is also one of those miscellaneous clauses. In international arbitration, you have to be very careful. Actually, after you must have read about Balco judgment. So that has given a totally new dimension to international arbitration. So you have to be very careful what will be your seat, what will be your place, venue you have to. I think you should just divide your arbitration clause into different sections and clearly manifest all the things. There are a lot of English cases on seat and venue differences, which was followed in Balco, in fact. And then you also talk about the substantive law, the process of the arbitration. That is another thing. Arbitration Act controlling your procedure. But what will be the substantive law? Will it be English law? Will it be US law on sale of goods? Let's take an example, Sale of Good Act. So will English law will apply Indian sale of good or US sale of good? That is one issue. That's a substantive law. But what is the procedure? Will the Indian Arbitration Act, where the ICC rules will apply? So these has to be very specific. People are now understanding because of the opening up of economy that we just can't avoid copy pasting the clauses anymore, which is good for us on the lighter side.
So isn't the procedure taken care of from the institutional arbitration side rather than the ad hoc?
Ad hoc also, there is arbitration acts in UK also. You know, statute, it's a codified over there. So you have to specify which arbitration act, because the procedure powers of the arbitrator to grant orders, enforceability of the contract, those award, those becomes an issue. You're absolutely right on the point that in institutional arbitration, the procedure is laid out. So procedure and statutes are two things which will run parallelly. In the statute, always it's written, unless otherwise provided. I provide the institutional arbitration, now the statute will follow. So I provide the procedure of the institutional arbitration, now the act will say how to exercise my power, what is the time, like that.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you. On behalf of MCO Legals LLP would, sorry.
Good afternoon. My name is Shreyas. My question is with respect to arbitrability of shareholder disputes. Generally, in foreign countries, shareholder disputes are very easily arbitrable. Arbitrator can decide on those issues. But in India, there are several restrictions. So would this in any way impact international commercial arbitrations with respect to India being the venue of arbitration?
I think you might be asking if the seat is India. Because venue you can have anywhere, it won't affect the law and everything. Seat, then the substantive law will flow from India, I think so. I'm not, I have to look onto that. But regarding the share dispute, definitely under Section 110 Act, it's the jurisdiction now with the NCLT and all those things. So normally arbitrable, it is not in nature, that's the case laws over here. On the international, I'm not sure with that. Thank you.
Okay, I think there's one more.
Good afternoon, sir. So my question is, why should we use arbitration over legal litigation?
Sorry, ma'am.
So why should we use arbitration over legal litigation?
Legal litigation.
Litigation.
I think especially arbitration becomes more relevant in any commercial transaction. Commercial transactions are where it's commercial in nature, corporate law and everything. So in any commercial transaction, the value of time is highly essential. It's the essence of the contract. That is one of the basic conditions of any contractual commercial document. Time is the essence. If time is the essence, then you always want to find a way that if there is a dispute, which there will be, that's the worst outcome, so you assume that. So if there is a dispute, how do I come out of it? That's why I use the word exit. Because sometimes we draft our international contract, the first question after a couple of meetings, they ask what will be our exit clause. So why do they give value to the exit clause? They define the jurisdiction of Delhi will be there and everything, but they then also define how the arbitration, because they want a quick way out of it. Because abroad, if you, let's take India out of the picture, abroad litigation is far more expensive. Litigation, time effective, but arbitration is cheaper compared to that. Arbitration is faster than litigation. Lifespan now in UK itself has become about 2.5, 3 years. I remember when I was doing internship over there, it was about 8 months, the lifespan of a plaint up to the judgment. So that's why people want a quick relief and quick way out and to informal setup. So it's a personal job, but yes, in a commercial world,